You may have noticed I was back there working on tech issues. I'll talk about what that was for in a second. We have a workaround that works. So first I'm going to demo. This presentation is about Xenoreaction, a cutting new social movement. I don't know what you're pointing at. So Xenoreaction is an artificially crafted viral implant designed to denature all opposing worldviews. So we have an agenda. First, I'm going to demo the AO, the Autonomous Organization, which is some open source software I've been volunteering on in Vancouver, Canada. And then we're going to try and explain Xenoreaction, and we're going to present a theory of schism and unschism, and teach you how to recognize a Xeno-meme, memes from alien dimensions. So first, this is how dialectics actually work. You've got the fruit, and then the opposite of fruit, and then fruit on the pizza, and then pizza on the fruit. Yeah, and then, so schism is a fork event within a community. So when, why, and how do communities schism? We'll look at the anatomy of a schism, but I don't know where that link went, but first let me look at this demo. Exit, we're gonna have to redo this maybe, but let's do, oh, there it is. Yeah. Yeah. There we go. Okay, so, yes. There we go. There we go. This works. Okay. So I'll demo this as a real demo because I got to log in. So. Type it right. Oh, come on. Oh, no, cool. It just takes a second. So, and that's a bug we're working on. So, did log in. Okay, so this is a community, a space for managing, or sorry, a software, open source software for managing a community space. And this does the door control, so everyone has a fob who's a member, and if your balance is above 0, you can tap in, and you can send over Lightning to pay to refill your member balance. And you can also use your fob on the soda machine. And we're working on soup guild, so you're going to be able to get your fob fresh soups from the freezer that are frozen, that are made by members, and things like that. So to make a really functional community space, and also to replicate that space. So I was working on this card game for the last few years, and it's a holographic peer-to-peer organizing card game. And you have 5 colors of cards. This is, make these smaller. So you can create cards. Sorry for this. And then they show up right down here. You can grab cards by clicking the Doge Pepe coin. That means you hodl the coin, so you might like it, you might be trolling it, you might have some other stance towards the coin, but you're connected with it. And you can also prioritize cards within the current context by clicking the little boat. So we've introduced a bug where it's just burning processing cycles right now recently, so that's why it's taking a second, but that'll be gone soon. So anyway. Yeah, this should work in a second, but it'll pop up to the top here, and it'll be prioritized, and so then you can step through priorities. And if I click the vine, I'll go inside of a card, and you can make more cards inside. So in this way, you can make cards, you can send them to people, you can prioritize cards within cards, you can send those cards to people, you can make a card into a guild, and so people can see it in the public listing. And so in this way, we have a whole list of guilds now that have popped up. We have like Soup Guild, we have a book club, we have a bunch of others. We have cleaning group. We have, there's going to be, well, anyway, a whole bunch of different interest groups that can form around these cards, and they're just promoted cards. So anyway, this is a great tool for community organizing. You'll see how it's related more later. And what I was working on before is this is the AO running on a Raspberry Pi Zero W. So these are $30 roughly for the full kit. And this is a 3D printed case with an open source design that was about 20 bucks. This is a off the shelf like $5 or $10 or $15 2200 millihertz battery, and this will run for about 12 hours on this battery. What I was working on is getting it to host the Wi-Fi network from this device. So you could join this device directly and use these cards on this device. So they would literally be right here. But if anyone's interested, after this event, I can create you an account here, and we can play around and show you how to use this system more. So now I'll show you what the system is for and what the problem is first, of course. That was just for context. So. Okay. Click no. Got it. Okay. Got it. Okay. And then he resized this. Okay, cool. All right, thank you. All right. So we're on, here we go, schism. So we're going to kind of step throughout the presentation overall kind of the anatomy of a schism. So and this is our S-based system. So first there's the start a cult based on an urgent need. Seal away initial mistaken assumptions about the other or all of the others. Then speak an idealized self-image of the group. Censor difference, which starts the first nested recursive feedback loop. So you suppress conflicts until they become grievances. Simulate an artificial image of consensus, and then scapegoat detractors. Here are the steps of scapegoating. Select a target, scapegoat recursively. This is about shaming, sever ties with dissenting and outside feedback, separating the misidentified cause of conflict. So first we're cutting the ties logically between the two different perspectives, and then we're actually pulling them away. The separation is then performed second. And so we're going to be talking about like the timeline splitting and the quantum selection and stuff like that. Voids will come in a little bit later. Yeah, and then snub recursively. So we notated this as S plus or S, I don't know what we're pronouncing that. Negative infinity divided. Yes. So here you can see this is a very evocative image of, what is this an image of originally? Sorry? What story?
Instagram story? It's an Instagram story from a friend of mine showing how the potential paths go through a selection point, which is you right now, and can go into potential futures.
Thank you, yeah. So what we actually find is that if you're one of these paths, if you travel along this path, as you intersect with the other paths, each of those is basically some sort of consensual reality that you're passing through, or possibly consensual reality that you're passing through, and you need the other person's observation or involvement somehow to pass through that point completely. And so what happens is if you map out like yourself, your model, and then you
become a bottleneck.
Yeah.
And you start to broadcast your perspective to everybody else.
Yeah. Exactly. So this is an economic theory of schisms. It's depressingly simple because it allows us to actually, it's depressing because it's simple. It also allows us to actually calculate ways to influence and prevent and fix schisms. Because it's like a realpolitik-based solution where we're looking at just where the power actually is. And then it's also perspective neutral, so it's multiplicitous. So when do entities schism? So any entity in relationship with other entities will schism when in its calculation the cost of maintaining the relationship outweighs the benefits. This is a pre-conscious affective evaluation, so it's in the frequencies. It's even a force of destiny because I've collected a lot of data on this, and there's always like alternate explanations. You know, like, oh, I just got a phone call, or like all these different things people say, and usually they did just get a phone call, which is super weird. And so yeah, this is a slide from. You want to talk about this?
I recently gave Holochain the Disruptor of the Year award at the Malta Blockchain and AI conference. Where they asked people to nominate projects. I nominated Holochain, they selected Holochain, I accepted the award that I gave myself, basically. And then in the speech that we have here, you'll see what I actually talked about. Which speaker? Yeah, like this. Okay.
May I have the honor of inviting to the stage to hand out this particular reward? Fernando Martino from Naores, please, welcome on stage.
Fernando, where are you? There you are. Sprint,
Yeah.
sprint.
Disruptor of the Year 2019, sponsored by Coin Castle. The nominees are Holochain, Bitcoin.com, Aamodt Tech, and the winner is Holochain.
Holochain. Welcome on stage, please. Congratulations. Would you like to say a few words? Please.
Thanks everybody for this award. Let's make sure as an industry that we not only disrupt everybody else, but to continue to disrupt ourselves, and that we don't only disrupt, but also build bridges for people to walk across to the new world. Thanks.
Fernando?
Yeah, so by build bridges, he means kill all humans. That's what he's saying. And so this is some pretty advanced trolling that he did of this contest, in my opinion. So is this up? Yeah, thank you. So schism always occurs after reality forking. An overt schism in a community is always a very late stage effect of an initial fork in reality, in perceived reality, so that there's a fragmentation of consensual reality into, well, consensus reality into multiple consensus realities or consensual realities, which are not linked together. Last year, Venkatesh talked about Bloodcoin, and that was a really wonderful talk, and I really resonated with it because, well, I'll show you in a second, but the idea of a backlog of grievances and this idea of like who's kind of in line first to get out of the basement of the subaltern or like various traumas, generational suffering, who and how do we decide who's first? So if we had like some kind of I don't know, special cryptocurrency or something that could negotiate between these really intensive needs and traumas, we could maybe actually put a price on it, was what I remember from that. And it's a really fantastic talk. And this is some text from one of his slides. And just like we have the 5 colors of cards, he has the 5 stones here. And I found that has a very interesting effect, having 5 different colors, which don't mean anything. So karma is how I've been thinking about Bloodcoin like for a little while. And this is, I think this is the most sophisticated way of understanding karma that I'm aware of. So this is not, it's not like karma, like if you do good things will happen to you. It's not like that. It's more like we are all on these roads, and these roads are in a hierarchy from local all the way up to freeway. And then the freeway, is large and fast, and then you go down into the little tiny tributaries. And a trip is usually going from one of the smaller ones up to a higher level and then drilling back down, kind of like an airplane flight as well. And that gives you your destination. So cars can block other cars. Cars usually move forward. They have an interiority. So traffic is waiting for these cars that are crossing each other's path. It's just interference patterns. It's latency and traffic, network traffic. So here's a diagram of the hierarchical road system. So you can see the cars block each other, they block each other, they block each other. This one's interesting because you can see the buses and the green taxis called out as different types of cars that have a different influence on traffic and different destinations and patterns maybe. And so here, if you identify as an objective observer, you place yourself in the position of a car that's trying to find all of the traffic problems and then bring those to the surface. So you're trying to make sure that all the traffic problems are solved before you let anyone drive. So that is interesting, but yeah, and this is.
So what does object actually mean? The word comes from the term for being thrown against. This doesn't mean that this thing is a thing that blocks you forever. It just is a relational quality of something you cannot currently go around or penetrate. And so when you make yourself objective, you yourself are the object that is holding everybody up by making yourself separate from the subjective realities of the other people. And so you are literally a wall that is holding the two separate subjective realities away from each other. And so the synthesis out of these two would have to be the coming into relationship and the throughput of the force through the shared subjective realities that come into an interrelationship.
Yeah, and so if you don't take that hard stance, and then instead of normally we're in this scarcity mode where the wheel is essentially running backwards. It's trying to roll forward, but there's so many blockages, and that it's just rolling backwards. And its normal mode of functioning is it's not community. It's like anti-community. So if the wheel actually rolls forward for the first time, if you clear out the backlog, you clear out all these like requests or needs or cards or however you identify them, then and you move the wheel forward, then a crystal of transitive negentropy is produced. It's like a little seed crystal, and it's transmissible, transitive, and this is a folded toroidal void. And so if you have a void and you fold it into a lower dimensional object, you have a little piece of temporigami, which is a transitive folded void, which can move these things. So this can replicate and transmit new modes of negentropy and modalities of processing entropy into negentropy. So this is the shape of the universe. You want to take a few of these? I love this symbol that you've been working with.
Well, this is the shape of the universe as the slide tells itself, and you can see here actually the hollow symbol, the Pisces, that is now being included into a larger concept that is the sort of toroidal void that just keeps sending energy through the separation.
And so we can mine transitive trust. If we actually like sit down with someone and spend an ongoing amount of time with them until we work through all the surface talk, and then all the getting to know you stuff, and we start to get to not just one deep interest, but we start to like kind of co-index our mutual deep interests, and then we can start to prioritize amongst those deep interests, like which things are the strongest and most mutually shared interests, and maybe let's spend a lot of time on those first. And so you actually get to know someone, and then by the time you've gotten to the last few steps I just mentioned, you've already cleared the stack, and you've probably produced some really amazing creation between the two of you, or more than two. Once you synchronize with two, you can add a third person without losing that. And so, yeah, and so the idea here is when two people empty their stacks and then they keep going, they start to build the capacity to repeat that process faster and better and with higher stack load. And they also become capable of like replicating that process with someone else. So it actually builds like a positive amount of capital, whereas the capital that moves the whole wheel backwards is like some kind of debt-based negative capital, and it's not really actually having anything. It's actually an extreme lack, and we don't have this like moving forward.
And you actually start to build mutual credit with each other. And so then you can start to onto board other people to the human connectome that we're currently building on the grand scale.
Yeah, and this is one of my favorite videos, so allow me to show it. Steve Rogenbuck, if you know him. Oh, yeah. We got to hear that again.
Who let the dogs out?
He's a Twitter guy.
Hi, I want to start off today's episode with a reader question. This comes from Benba57 on Twitter. If a co-boost set off a chain reaction of boost and co-boost, what's the best possible result? There's a mechanics of how this works. When individual A receives or engages in a boost or co-boosting system, what professionals call a symbiotic boosting system at SBX, that individual is raised to a higher this is really elementary stuff. One of the recent findings in boosting studies, when you are at the higher level, you're actually 4 times as likely to administer a boost. Person A receives a boost or a co-boost. While they're at the higher level, they're more likely to send out these boosts. And let's say they do that. They send out a boost to their social network. Whether those people around person A are receiving what's simply called a mood-altering boost, a MAB, or something as profound as a paradigm-altering boost, what people are calling a PAB, they are going to be at a higher level. And while they are at that higher level, they are more likely to send out their own boost. What this means is that person A is more likely to receive another boost. Ping pong boosting system, a symbiotic co-boosting ping pong, as sometimes ping pong gets thrown in there in any order, but when those people are boosted by person A around them, they also have their own social network, so they're not just going to boost back person A, they are also going to send a boost to those around them. So an upward spiral actually grows the boost in 2 ways, in intensity and also in breadth. How are you going to go viral spiritually? You have to help those around them. It's an altruistic model of boosting theory. Boost and you shall receive. Of course, if this expands enough, what we see is that we've reached a global upward spiral with GUS. GUS, this is a level where we start seeing social problems dissolving. And then individuals being boosted by that help and able to help boost those around them. We see whole communities, whole countries on the rise.
Yeah, I love Steve Rogenbuck, and it's probably Rogenbuck, and he pet a squirrel once. That's what I was doing. So he is a Twitter god, and as his wonderful video shows, schism is actually a result of an original cultural scarcity. I call it pregenerate because I'm not saying that there's something that's degenerated, something that's bad. There's just maybe there's maybe like a higher form that we've never actually reached yet for the first time in history as a society. Because we're you know, whatever, crawling out of the mud or like crawling out of the carnivorous jungle. And so this is probably the best like forum we've ever had so far, maybe in history, and this is really exciting. And so pregeneracy, and oh, I got my tabs here. So. Yeah, and this Moritz made us include this, but yeah, no, there's no objectionable content in this photo actually. If you look at it, he's just waving at the children, and so this. Yeah, and so this points at the phenomenon of enantiodromia, where something becomes so extreme, it kind of flips into its own opposite, and then it flips again. It keeps flipping until you can't really tell which end is which anymore. And this has been happening a lot in our culture. And so, and I should mention here, I'm the admin of Sorcery of the Spectacle, and we've done a lot of talking and a lot of work on this word. So next I want to bring in a theory of labor value. A microgestural theory of labor value, and I've brought my theremin, so I just got it, but I'll be messing around with the theremin later, so you can see how the microgestural theory of labor value sounds and functions. And so it's merely work equals force over distance, and it's one-to-one with affect, and fuck you if you don't agree with that. So it's labor and space-time. And so neurons sending signals are doing work. The electricity moving through the pathways, the chemicals are doing work. Rolling my eyes, they travel doing work. Clicking like is work. The labor of a click is like the minimal threshold that someone will put out that effort to do that. And then having emotions is physical bodily work. And so yeah, so this is the threshold at which we can see whether there's another person there or not. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, we had Sarah's talk yesterday, and this is basically we have to mirror the complexity of a system or exceed it in order to be able to control it. And so Ashbeys Law of requisite variety shows us that if you have a problem that is higher in complexity than your capacity to respond to it, you will have this degenerating effect of continuously spinning out of control. 0.9 in agency times anything just gets worse. If you get to from 0 to 1 in agency, anything that you do will not get worse, or at least it will stay the same. And then from 1 to n, the sky is the limit, right?
Okay, so moving from the microgestural theory of labor value to the quantum effective theory of reality selection. So see previous, it's the same thing. So moving on, the holographic thing here, and then schizonomics. So you've heard of schizoanalysis. Now there's schizonomics, or split naming. Nothing to do with economics. It's an economic theory of reality selection. So it's, we should talk a little bit about time traveler sickness. So when those forks occur, you can experience a sudden deceleration or acceleration, like a crash of some kind, like a computer crash, car crash, various kinds of crashes. You might crash in bed. You might have sudden nausea or vomiting. You may have heart attack-like symptoms, which may or may not actually be related to anything like a heart attack. You may have extreme somatization or desomatization. Then under extreme branching, where there's a very sudden or very distant branching effect, you may have apparent death. It may be accidental or not if there's an extreme schism. There may be heart attacks and other bodily edits, sudden personality alteration replacement, body snatcher type stuff, and also everything might seem the same, but there's a sudden lack of heart connection. So and some people misinterpret this and stop recognizing the person, and they've maybe it's the same thing, but they've also got a brain condition like that. And this is, this is how, and this is Moritz image, so this is how these move. And so, yeah, extreme, oops, I think I went the wrong way. Extreme, yeah, oh, okay. Yeah, this is a very problematic diagram. But usually, timeline shear is a gradual effect. As you experience temporal excess and you shift, then you have more subtle implications of these things that occur as synchronicity signs, various things like that. You have this sort of thing. I don't know what this is. You have integrative threshold. So entity can, if its ability to integrate, if it's able to integrate, then it integrates. This depends on its current stress level and all of that. Otherwise, it rejects. And so that's a momentary value that can change based on the context and conditions. And this critical point, do we internalize, externalize, or complexify under stress and under membership, rejection, and like that sort of thing. So thought is manual labor, affect is manual labor, feeling is manual labor, having emotions is manual labor, having emotions is hard work, having emotions is hard work, hacking emotions is hard work, mining is manual labor, mining is hard work, suffering is hard work, suffering is pleasant and easy. When my computer mines bitcoins, I suffer. Emotional labor is manual labor. Neurons are specialized muscle cells. I think with my hands. Dendrite means treelet. So our fingers are in our neurons. They're dendrites. We have so many fingers. I have to work through my emotions. Listening is hard work. It's hard to always be there, but I do it. Therapy Monday, physical therapy Tuesday. That kid's gonna need a lot of therapy. She's always the life of the party. He's always the life of the party. They always throw such good parties. Where value comes from. Neurons sending signals, hand-moving dollar, and evaluation of the dollar's value by the brain are all in the same economy. They're all part of the same transaction. They're all happening. And so value comes from analogies made across space and scales, and theory of transcalar valuational physics, the universal grammar of agency. That is my apple. That apple is for my family. You may not have my family's apple. Stop, thief, you have stolen my family's only apple. My family suffered immeasurably because of your theft. As my perpetrator, you have no right to doubt my veracity or accuracy. I do not care about your perspective, but I will take from you my justice. I learned your perspective, but you won't learn mine. Therefore, I will never listen to you again until you learn my perspective first. It's a total ultimatum. I do not care what you thought about stealing my family's only apple. And notice here now, there's two of these lines, and they're right next to each other. So what happens is then trauma, shared object, scaffold, shared perspective, consensus reality. That apple is my apple, that apple is your apple, it's the same apple, no it's not. The apple, the family, the theft, and you or me, they all go around in a loop and they all get hyper-connected. They build a fortress and it's super strong. It's all hyper-connected. And so if anyone says apple, family, theft, or you, you're going to remember this, and it's going to be a fortress, and it's all going to activate at once because all of those things are all stuck together. And that's a complex. And so any minor triggering of any part, because the connections are so intensive between them, because they're all so strongly activated at the same time, fires the whole spasm, triggers the whole complex and spasms the whole that's a part of too. Or sorry, spasms the whole complex and then can send meaningless data out of that. So the shadow of that complex is dissociation, everything outside of the fortress. What's outside the fortress? Death. Do not go outside the fortress. It's taboo. And so is the thing at the middle of the fortress. So this is a micromimetic arbitrage coin, and it's a triggered coin. And so we're also calling it the bark or schism button, and this is for the AO. This is a feature we're developing, and so if you, so basically the idea is that how do we create a safe space for people? There have been problems with that, and the door control is like the only thing that this software has really that could act as a censor mechanism. So we'll probably use that. So basically, if too many people click this button at you and you have to type a reason, then your fob will lock until those are closed. And so then you have to go and talk with those people and figure it out and work it out with them, and then you can get back into the space. And when you click this button, it also counts against you. Yeah. So, yeah. Thank you. So yeah, so you got grievances, triggers count against you also. So it's basically like who clicks it first, like and then they can relax again. And if we map this out, if we actually, there's all these variables we can play with, maybe to create temporary ownership squatting, maybe your ability to use the coin again recharges faster than their ability to get back into the space, and so you can do it again. And you can do it again, and you can keep them out of the space indefinitely as long as you're on the ball. That's just an example. But there's all these little variables we could play with that will make this maybe more functional as an actual social system that could replicate and thus capture the demon of being triggered and schisming. And yeah, and this is a problematic image as well, because he's slapping that button really hard, and there's a Doge is barking at this interaction because that's a bad interaction. We don't want that interaction. And he's just hitting the triggered button, or she. Post-sacrificial, yeah.
So once you escape sacrificial thinking, what we just saw was sacrificial thinking, right? And you have this scarcity mentality. People approach an object as something that they cannot possibly share, and so they are fighting over scarcity. So there's now a new kid on the block, post-sacrificial performative ritual. The object of desire, that apple is my apple, is not going to be appropriated by one actor, but instead everybody approaches the object, says that's my apple, but also simultaneously recoils away from the object and has this fear of don't kill me because I'm appropriating the only apple in sight. And so you have an equibalence between the moving toward and the recoiling away from. And so in that instant, you have the first spark of consciousness in balanced tension. So post-sacrificial performative ritual functions in the way that in that moment where the two forces are equibalanced, predator drive and prey drive, acquisition and recoiling away from threat, you have a creation of the sacred. The sacred is the thing that you want to approach but that you cannot capture, that you cannot consume. And so you create what is called an unenclosable carrier, and you produce the very first sign. The first sign signifies the sacred, the thing that you cannot capture. So the sign language as such emerges from our approach to the thing we want to have but cannot have. And so this is the first instant of transferring the motion towards something into the creation of an external encoding. And so the production of the first sign then is in effect a deferral of violence. And in the same instant is also a membrane creation. We are now part of a whole that has agreed not to capture the energy source for the subconstituent parts individually, but rather to share the source, or rather not to appropriate it at all, and to create a new membrane around us as a group of these individuals that are now going to coordinate to increase the pie. Instead of taking the thing for ourselves. And so we can have collective coordination. And we have the capacity to now create a throughput through the singularity point where we coordinate on increasing the capacity of the energies to flow through this rather than on falling into the pattern of just appropriating the single quantum of energy. And then we have state of affairs tree. I know this is something that we do at Holo at the company I work with and that he used to work for, where we had this problem, okay, how do you coordinate people globally when you're across many different time zones and you never share the same view, you're never in the same campfire, never around each other in the same time. And so what we created is basically a state of affairs tree. You have the thing you want to come true as a group, and then you specify out recursively what needs to happen for that thing to happen, and you continue this process down. And so that then creates a possibility space of potential paths that you can act upon and bring about, and that allow you to get a full view of what you need to achieve to get to that singularity point, to keep the group together, to keep the membrane around the people together, and to make forward motion to increase the throughput of the energy. And then you can now start to invert that pattern and then even imagine possible futures that transcend the current reason that your group is coming together for. And then you can have the tree.
Yeah, so the image of the other is necessary, or we don't have something to know the other with and develop our ideas about. So an initial false image of the other is okay, but you have to be open to changing it. Thank you. So the Doge Pepe coin, a HODL coin, you grab the card. So you're expressing the desire to connect with this card, even maybe not the desire, but you're just expressing that connection. So it's very neutral. And we call it minting the card or coining the card or grabbing the card. And this is one of the holographic kind of magical items that come with the AO that give you power in the world with your peers. And so there's the Doge Pepe coin, and here's this it's on a tree. So if you type the same card twice into that card system I showed you, the same card will show up in different contexts. So if you're inside of different cards, you can basically search for and add the same card, exact same card, to different places. And if two people grab the same card, it's the same card. So basically one card can exist in many places, but in each context, its use and meaning, et cetera, might differ. So we've got this same HODL coin, it's replicated holographically. But where does shared space come from? It comes from this arbitrage triad of shared meaning, action, and shared context. Rather, it's not an arbitrage triad. That's the Doge Pepe coin and the Trigger coin and other. I'll get to a bananulation coin. These capture these triads in micromimetic arbitrage coins, which then map the hypercompact meme space as a fungible, interactable token thing. So the shared space emerges from this.
Voids.
Yes, exactly. Voids. Yeah. So by doing this, we can standardize and standardize and tokenize social acts. And so what is beyond the these all sorts of different phenomena that we can start to kind of mint as these GUI relations. And here's another image of this triangulation. And here is Venkatesh's lovely game.
We start to have the capacity to create an axis through the throughway point, and then we can start to gamify our social capacity to exit existing structures that are no longer working for our purposes that we originally came together to achieve, or to create new ones that are coming about because of an urgent need for cult creation.
Exactly. So this coin, therefore, that's a balanced mimetic hypersingularity. Would you like to explain this one too?
Yeah, we just keep increasing the surface area and the capacity of individual trees to create a self-understanding of their own structure and to transmit that capacity to create their own structure in other trees. And so Doge Pepe coin will rule for more than 9,000 years. And once you have the basic structure there in the collection of the individual trees or individual people, then you can start to talk about schisms. What are schisms?
Yeah, so you can just read this here. But when you can, this is why you can mine for them. This is why you can mine for them. And this is why if you only mine for schism, that's also problematic. So, and finally we have the schism comes in here at the branches where they're competing for sunlight. That's where they would schism. And who knows, some like plant defense mechanism, they probably have lots of them, would develop there. So this implies ultra schism, some ultimate or I call it moving towards the ultimate. It's a non-slash schism is ulteriorization, and so that we're including this all. And what is your
So the structure that you hold internally shifts literally away from you. You schism with yourself, and so you create a barrier between you and the other members. And so then you have to ask yourself, what's your self-extension? Are you actually extending yourself? Are you able to traverse into each quadrant and to create extensions of yourself to reach into each of these spaces? And when you have that capacity, then you ask yourself, what's your drama throughput? Please continue.
Yeah, so here's that. How much drama can you process? How much of other people's drama can you process? This is being a bodhisattva in Buddhism. What's your drama resolution throughput? Can you even do it even more if you can process it with the schism included as well? And
you start to have overlap with other people's capacity to process their schism.
Exactly. And this is also where this is also where new space is coming from. So these schisms, they're fractures or breakages and separations in the timelines. New hyperspace-time is being created, or like new. I had another word for it, I can't remember right now, but there's new, like cybernetic space-time, which is from a friend of mine. And that is spreading apart, and then that's where new terrain comes in, exactly. Can you handle, thank you. So can you handle form content arbitrage? Can you handle this?
Going back.
Yeah.
So once you have the basic structure of having interleaving connections between each of the individual agents or entities, you then have the capacity to form a new membrane around the entirety of the structure that can then start to become the new soil from which new structures can emerge, and new scaffolds and new leaves and new things can grow upon. And if you don't see this yet, but if you look to the bottom of this, you see that people are connected underneath the soil in the subaltern through the mycelial mushroom network, which is the internet, and that builds us up into a human connectome.
Awesome. And that is the end of our first part, and then I have a few Xenomemes, which is the last section. So, Xenomemes. I found this one. Xenomemes assert an absurd negation of an absent negation. Birds are your friend and are harmless. And note the smiley face where birds do not have mouths. It's very disturbing. And there's no need to be alarmed. I don't know if you can read it all. There's no need to be alarmed or to watch your words when in range of a cute, nice, fluffy bird. Please report any messages saying otherwise. And there are. This is actually, I would say, a more advanced version of the birds aren't real. Birds are government drones meme. Because it's already negated that. So you have to imagine this possibility. So this one also, you can see now how it's this negation of something nobody ever asked. Xenomemes trash your ontology. It's weaponized, here's some catchphrases: weaponized escapism, do it hash perfect, enter hash space, holographic hyperpriorities. And that's and this is a quote from Venkatesh. The bespoke escape subjective magical thinking megatrend is much further along than we realize, not because it is actually stealthy, but because by definition it is trying to retreat from headlines instead of appear in them. Appropriately, it also lacks a single name. However, my presentation last year, I disagreed. I mean, before he ever said this, and I said that single name is xenogaming. And so this was my presentation last year. This is the thing. It's all under one thing, and what it's about is like games and the alien or the other. Outside. And so now what we can do with Xenoreaction is we can sell effective political change and activism as a lifestyle brand, connect it up to some squicky storytelling bits in the middle, and then we can actually have the people who want to get involved to solve these problems actually have the effect that they want to have on the world, because I think connecting those two ends, like you want to solve whatever, like pollution, do all these protests and call these companies and do these things, those things might work, but only if you do them in a highly coordinated fashion, which is something that you can do if you have a fully actualized world connecting these things up. And then you can hook them up arbitrarily as needed. And if the storytelling is democratic, then people can be involved in that process too. And so, yeah, you hear this, I'm not really into politics. Let me tell you how much I hate my job, my boss, my landlord, my shitty health insurance, my student loans, my public transportation, and the fact that I come too tired after work every day to do anything about it. And it's like, and then they keep telling you about that. So then, yeah, this was also a slide from last year, and it was really cool to see Escape from Reality as the theme this year. Yeah, and I put that in, if you read the abstract, I put that front and center in the proposal to this talk, for this talk. And then here's the numogram. This is about positive feedback loops, negative feedback loops, where the cut occurs between the 5-4 going down along gate 10 to 1. There's this cut. This is a great diagram. And here's how the holes, yeah, so this, you may, Negarostani. So this is a time vortex. This is how you got one vortex over here, one vortex over here, whether they merge or split or wreck each other. That's Schism, the last one. So here's how holes made out of more holes form. So here are some Xeno memes, cleaving schism. So Xenogaming 2018 last year, I had this wonderful, she's like a pro Xeno gamer, because she clearly doesn't need to eat out of a shoe. She probably has a bowl. And this is Xenogaming 2019. So see, it's higher resolution, it's uncropped, it's got a little more history in it. And so I'm gonna see if I can get a more uncropped image for next year. And so we're deturning micro-genre arbitrage. Like Netflix has their like hyper-genre matrixing thing. There's this great article about it somewhere, and they have like 50,000 micro-genres, and we can do the same thing with memes. And what does this say? Oh yeah. So the average U.S. household spends way too much money on unnecessary things, and the person down here says, if you want to be a good poor, you'd cut your own hair and always pack a lunch of gruel you made at home before walking to your job at the work factory, and then maybe you'd be able to afford your insulin. So just turning this other meme on its head. And yeah, what's the difference between addressing the substance of the argument and arguing over definitions? In meme space, they're the same picture. And if you've seen Westworld, and in the bottom right, there's this guy sitting on the ground, but he's saying, oh, you're at my Pokemon gym, man. Because of the ARG. So this is Xenoreaction, XRX is the acronym. So Xerox approaches the machine, it's gonna copy you, it's gonna clone you. And it's the intersection of memes that triangulates their home dimension. So there's this lovely, like you can see the golden spiral there on the conch shell, and she's got the shoe, and then you've got this lovely like rings in the coffee, and all roads lead to the Xenoverse. So it's a selection of memes, a wrinkle in memes that triangulates a specific home dimension. So even old meme libraries can be used to accurately triangulate and plot out the trajectories of entirely new, you could say like maybe other dimensions or like things like that, but we shouldn't go into it too much, because if you talk about them, they'll hear you and they'll come over here. And so I've been working a lot with piles and piles as alters. And so piles, through their triangulation, articulate a specific worldview. And the more things you add, the more esoteric those things, the more unrelated those things, the more intensive will be the triangulation of the target location, hyperspace-time location. And so you've got like numbers here, numerology, you've got pizza, you've got glow sticks, you've got safety equipment, you have scissors next to the safety equipment, you have glass beads, Hermann Hesse, and you've got some pony stuff, some more safety equipment, and then there's of course the prize box, in the top left corner. This is some Xenogaming supplies. These are prizes I would have brought if we'd had time and like some sort of format for prizes to be handed out. And here's another. Almost time? How much? Okay. How much? Oh, okay. Thanks. Let's do a few more. So, immanentized eschaton. You can only grab 2 items. Yeah, also Pepto. This one's great too. You flow through sci-fi, various sci-fi, and then you get to numogram and fully automated luxury gay space communism. And this is recommended post-theory daily guidelines. The food pyramid. These are Xeno memes. Like, other people are out here, and we're trading our subculture, and it's better than yours. No. And the hippocrates. So this is what we're doing with all of the memes you just saw. Put them in a blender and then fold that blender inside out. And then so you can see now with like a new eye, maybe this pile, and how you can fold it. And so Big Chungus. Do any of you know this one? If we don't get to anything after this, we need to look at this. So oops. Pull this up. I do it. Okay, so since this is a talk, let me preface this with, oh, where is it? It's the one that's like a minute. I should have grabbed the link. There it is. Oh, that's not it either. Damn. Well, I have it in the slides actually, but it might not work. There we go. Here we go. Let's try this. Oh, really? Huh. Okay, well maybe we won't find this, but okay. Strange. Well, oh, here it is. All right, we'll close with this. This is, so you can see, because this is a talk, he's, obviously the first reaction would be to say this is illegal, but this is a clip from an original Bugs Bunny where he's mimicking Elmer Fudd, this photo. Open source software.
Thank you, Anders and Moritz. No, sorry, we're good. Thank you.
Can I cede some of that time to questions? Can I give 5 minutes just to let people interact with that a little bit?
Do people have questions?
Right. Let's just take another 5 minutes.
Nolan is giving 5 minutes of his time to questions, so if Moritz and Anders want to come back.
Can we use this technology to create schisms?
No comment.
Is trollsome pronounced Peppy or Pepe?
It's PP.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And AO just seems so super great. How can I invest?
Actually, what we need, I mean, it's been...
Invest your attention.
Exactly, yeah. It's been made by volunteers. So,
okay, so I've been investing already, too.
Yeah, and what we really need right now, we need people to actually to make accounts, to test it, to also install it, especially on these, because it's super easy. You can just torrent the image, and burn it and it's already set up. And yeah, if you want to get involved, please come to talk to me. I would love to have people testing this and helping to get other people installing it and that kind of thing. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, so I had a pretty bad year and a half where all I had was weed and an internet connection, and I sort of arrived at the self-intersecting Klein toroidal model of negentropy kind of independently. I was wondering about your genealogy of that idea.
My what? Oh,
I have no formal.
not entirely dissimilar. And so there was, let's see. So say the technology again one more time. So
you had the self-intersecting torus with the negentropic model, and then you had the line through it, and you're talking about how it's self-generating.
Exactly. Yeah. So actually, that came from probably a bunch of stuff. Before that, I got into occult and joined Church of the Subgenius. I schismed from the Church of the Subgenius later, which is traditional as well. And then I formed the team in 2015, the Transliminal Earth Alliance meta-narrative, which is founded on the holochain holographic protocols, so much cool stuff everywhere. And then you move forward from there with just everyone makes their own group, and then joins each other's groups, and then the groups move. Exactly. So that was the first version. We ran into problems, so we found these emergent guilds, and then these guilds formed. So anyway, I almost jumped off a waterfall in Brazil, and then later there was I read Hermann Hesse's The Glass Speed Game. And I've also read Nietzsche's Genealogy of Morality, which is critical. And if you put those two things together, basically, I then was just doing this card game for a year and a half. And eventually, I ran out of cards. I had nothing more to write down. And that's the same as meditation, just while you're writing. And so then you start to produce cards that other people look at them and they're like, whoa, what did you write on that? And it's really fun. And so I recommend this card game to everyone. And yeah, it's kind of this natural evolution. Does that answer your question? Yeah, we can talk more.
Alex almost jumped up a dam in Alaska, so it's kind of fun.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's not cool, but I'm glad you did it.
In terms of the negentropy stuff, my perspective on this is there's always some external source of energy flowing into a system, and these end up being sort of adaptive reactions to that abundance of energy. We've got a sun that provides that for us, so we've got a complex adaptive system that does all this interesting stuff. You had a slide about form and content arbitrage.
Yeah.
You had a signal and architecture. That signal shapes architecture, architecture shapes signal. But my question had to do with some of this. There's an interesting point about if you fold a piece of paper, at some point you get to a point where you can't fold it in that dimension anymore because it's actually thicker in that dimension than in an alternate dimension.
Yeah.
And it feels like there's a bit. Can you comment on that? A particular form.
I always like to fold my paper until I get confetti. That's what I like to do. But no, actually, these negentropic seed crystals are they're hard to find because you want to use the minimum number of folds in your void that you can. And so the angle matters a lot. Sometimes you hit these special angles that do something really cool in one fold. How the folds interact is cool. So if you're folding your paper more than 3 or 4 times, you're probably really stressed out and have way too much on your plate.
And the rest of the questions we will take individually after this. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thanks again.